In this video, we are going over 20 countries with the most amount of tanks in the world. Of course, we all know that quality plays a key role as well, but today we will talk just by bare numbers. With that being said, let's start. Number 20, Jordan. The Jordanian army has 1365 tanks at disposal, of which around 1024 are ready for duty. Tanks represent the 5.3% of the total amount of land forces vehicles. Jordan rely on NATO countries for tank supply, mostly from Great Britain, since they use tanks like Khalid, Al Hussein, and Tariq MBTs. But they also have MEL-60A1 captured from Iran during the Iran-Iraq War in 1980, and some M60A3 and Leclerc main battle tanks. Number 19, Greece. The Hellenic army has 1365 tanks at disposal. 956 of them are ready to take service. The tank fleet represent around 2.3% of the ground vehicles in service in the Greek army. This nation relies primarily from Germany in order to get the tanks the army needs, consisting mostly from Leopard 1, Leopard 2, A4, and some Leopard 2 A6. However, there are also M48 and M60 tanks in storage as well. Number 18, Israel. Israel can count on 1370 tanks in total, which around 1096 are ready for battle. Tanks are the 3% of the total land-armed vehicles. This nation has its own tanks that produce internally, which are the Merkava tanks and the Mark III and Mark IV variants. To be honest, I thought they still had in use the Magak tanks, the Israeli version of the American M60, but I didn't find any information online. If you know more, please let me know in the comments below. Number 17, Saudi Arabia. The Saudi Arabian army has 1485 tanks in stock, and 1188 of them are available for deployment. The MBTs represent the 5.7% of the total amount of the land fighting vehicles. Most of them are M1A2 Abrams and M60 tanks, but there are also some AMX-30 in reserve. Number 16, Morocco. The Royal Moroccan Army can count on 1564 tanks, of which around 1017 are ready for duty. Tanks represent the 9.6% of the ground-armed vehicles. Morocco imports its tanks, mostly from NATO countries, but there are also tanks from China, Pakistan, and Belarus. The nation did choose M1 Abrams, M60 and M48 Patton tanks, VT1A Al-Khalid, and some T-72B. Number 15, Algeria. The Algerian land forces keep 1631 tanks in stock, but 1061 are ready to take service. The MBTs are the 4.2% of the total amount of land forces vehicles. Russia is the main provider of tanks for the land forces of Algeria, primarily T-90S and T-72M1. There are also several T-55AMV and T-62 tanks. Starting in 2021, the Algerian T-62 fleet underwent a unique homemade upgrade, turning the vehicle from an MBT into a fire support vehicle by replacing the 115mm gun with a 30mm automatic cannon. Number 14, Eritrea. The Eritrean army has 1756 tanks in storage, but only 702 are ready for duty. The main battle tanks represent the 30.8% of the total amount of Army's land vehicles, and they consist of T-55 and T-62 Russian tanks. Number 13, Ukraine. Ukraine can now count a total of 1777 tanks in stock, which 1155 of them are ready for battle. They are the 6.7% of the total amount of the land forces vehicles. Ukraine has its own tanks, but the majority of the tank fleet consists of foreign countries' supply. To name the most important, they have M1 Abrams, Challenger 2, Leopard family tanks, T-80 tanks in all variants, as well as T-72 and T-90 tanks, plus their own T-84 and T-64 BM. Number 12, Iran. The Iranian army has 1996 tanks at disposal, and 1397 of these are ready to take service. Even though the number is quite high, tanks are just the 2.8% of the total amount of land forces vehicles currently in the army. Iran produced and received T-72S tanks under license from Russia from 1993 to 2012. Plus, this nation produces its own tanks, which are the Karar and the Zulfikar. There are also some older tanks in the Iranians' army roster, like T-62 and M60 MBTs. We have already covered a good amount of countries, but now numbers start to become interesting. Number 11, Vietnam. The Vietnamese army can count on 2029 tanks in stock, which 1319 of them are ready for deployment. Tanks represent the 9.2% of the total amount of the ground forces vehicles. Vietnam rely on Russia and China for tank supply. The majority of the tank fleet consists of T-90S, T-62, and T-55M. As I said, there are also Chinese vehicles in service like the Type 59. Number 10. Turkey. The Turkish land forces can rely on 2231 tanks in total, of which around 1785 are ready for duty. The number of tanks represent the 3.7% of the total amount of military land vehicles. Turkey relied mostly on Germany and USA for supply by buying Leopard tanks and MBM-60 tanks. These latter have been upgraded mostly in the Sabra version. In 2024, though, the new Altay MBT's mass production commenced, as the nation aims to achieve autonomy from foreign supplies. Number 9. South Korea. The Republic of Korea has 2501 tanks in stock, which 2,001 of them are ready to take service. Tanks represent the 3.2% of the vehicles in the Army's inventory. South Korea produces its own tanks, which are the K1 and K2 MBTs. However, they use as well T-80U tanks for training purposes. Some M48A5 tanks are equipped for reserve infantry divisions. Number 8. Syria. The Syrian army possessed 2720 tanks in stock, but 1768 of them are ready for use. Tank fleet represent about 13.2% of the totally military vehicles. In the Army roster, we can find T-72, T-62, and T-55 tanks in all variants. The most advanced tank is the T-90, which is present in the AM and S variants. So basically, we are talking about vehicles coming from Russia, since Syria doesn't produce tanks on its own. Number 7. Pakistan. The Pakistan Army has 3,742 tanks in stock, which 2619 of them are ready for duty. They are the 6.4% of the total amount of land forces vehicles. Pakistan rely from China for tank supply, consisting mostly from Type 59, Type 69, and VT-4 tanks. There are also some T-80UD in service. Pakistan cooperated with China for design and produce the Al-Zarar and Al-Khalid tanks, which are the only projects which the nation has made investments. Number 6. India. Indian forces can count on 3,461 tanks ready for deployment, out of a total of 4,614. These numbers are quite high, but MBTs are actually the 2.9% of the total amount of land forces vehicles. India uses mostly Russian tanks, which produces locally, like the T-90S Bhishma and T-72M1. The only original MBT this country has is the Arjun, which is present since 2004. We have arrived at the top 5 countries of this list where the numbers become really big.
Yeah, boy.
Number 5. USA. The United States Army has 4,657 tanks at disposal, of which 3,493 are ready for duty. They represent the 1.3% of the total amount of military land vehicles. This nation doesn't rely on foreign countries for tank supply, but produces its own locally, which are the M1A2 Abrams tanks in all variations. Number 4. China. The Chinese Army can count on a total of 5,000 tanks, but 4,000 are deployable. They represent the 2.7% of the total amount of the land forces vehicles. China produces its own tanks, like the Type 96A, the Type 99, and the Type 99A, which are the most advanced ones. There are also some older tanks derived from the design of Russian vehicles, which are the Type 59, the Type 79, and the Type 88. Number 3. Egypt. The Egyptian army possessed 5,340 tanks in stock, of which around 3,738 are in service. They represent the 6.1% of the total amount of land vehicles in the Army's inventory. The main tanks used by the ground forces are the Americans' M1A1 Abrams, which are manufactured in Egypt, and the M60A3 Patton tanks. A small amount of T-80 tanks have also been purchased in 1997 from Russia, as well as T-62 and T-55 tanks, which are mostly kept in storage. Number 2. North Korea. The North Korean Army has a total of 3,215 tanks ready for battle, of a total of 5,845. Tanks represent the 13.8% of the total amount of land forces vehicles. North Korea possess armored vehicles mostly derived from China and Russian tank designs. We are talking about the Type 59 and T-55 tanks. However, they also produce locally some upgraded versions of these vehicles like the Chonma-ho and the Pakpung-ho. Recently, a T-14 Armada-like tank has been revealed and has been classified as M2020. Number 1. Russia. The Russian Army finds its place on this spot since it can count on 10,344 tanks ready for duty, of a total of 14,777 estimated. They represent the 7.6% of the total amount of vehicles in the Army's inventory. Russia produces its own tanks, mostly the T-90, T-80, and T-72 in all variants. Some T-64 and T-62 tanks have also been withdrawn from storage and sent to Ukraine, but they have been mostly destroyed during the invasion. By the way, if you liked the video, please consider to support me by clicking the like and subscribe button. See you in the next mission.